If you can see me, that means we are live tonight for another episode of America's Hometown Horror. And before we get started, I just want to take a moment to thank another one of our sponsors. And tonight, our episode is brought to you by DB Journey. DB Journey, in case you haven't heard, is a Scandinavian brand that makes backpacks and bags to help people on the move stay ready for anything, from the streets to the peaks. DB's gear is travel tested by some of the world's best athletes, adventurers, and creators. Over the past decade, DB has designed, developed, released, and refined the best bags in the market. With DB's patented hookup system, you're able to attach smaller products to your backpack, roller, or tote bag. So however you roll, they've got you covered. We here at America's Hometown Horror Podcast are teaming up with DB to exclusively offer our listeners 10% off your next purchase by using the code POD10, that's POD10, or by going to the link in our show notes. DB Journey, it's time to move on and time to get going, and away we go. All right, folks, we are live on Facebook and YouTube for another very exciting episode tonight. Thank you all for tuning in live, if anyone's out there watching. And I got to bring in my co-hosts here one by one, because as always, I am not alone in this podcast adventure. So I'm going to bring my co-hosts in here one by one. And I'm going to start with Andrew. What's up, dude?
What's up, buddy? How we doing?
Look at you. Look at you in all your glory.
You like this beautiful wave picture?
Yeah, it's very nice. It's almost, it reminds me of like vacation almost.
It's almost like this National Geographic shirt kind of matters.
The only person I know with a National Geographic shirt, Andrew. Way to go. Way to go, my friend. All right, let's bring in our next co-host. And tonight's next co-host is Catherine. What's up, dude?
Hello.
Good to see you.
Great to see
Welcome back. Welcome back after your 2-week absence. How you been?
Good.
Excellent.
Yep. I'm fine.
Awesome. Well, we missed you, and it's good to have you back.
You guys too. Yes.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're back for a very special episode, and of course, I'm going to introduce our very special guest, and it's time to bring in our buddy Tony, Anthony Landry from the Spooky World, the movie podcast. Spooky World, the movie, the documentary, and then also Spooky 101, the podcast. Tony, what's up, my friend?
Oh man, just about everything right now.
Yeah,
it's been there was a confluence of things that came together this past Friday, and the timing of this episode couldn't be more appropriate. And I don't normally get nervous by these things. My other job, I have to talk to a lot of people for the past 20 years in a public setting. I'm kind of nervous right now because not only are we going to start putting together some incredible films for folks who aren't familiar with horror to delve into, but we actually finally have for you 3 special reveals tonight from Spooky World, the movie.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
I am super excited, and I have to say, I feel honored, privileged, humbled to have you do it on our show, my friend. So thank you for coming on and taking the time to do it. I know that you are an incredibly busy individual, so we really do appreciate the time.
Yes, absolutely.
I am grateful for everything that you folks have done for us at Spooky World, the movie, and we don't forget our friends. And that's an important thing. That's what David did in the 90s. He's done his whole career, and that's what we're still doing now.
I love it. I love it, my friend. Excellent. Well, so Tony, I guess to kind of kick things off, obviously we know who you are, but for those who may not have listened to our interview that we did with you a few months back, you yourself, Quinn and David, why don't you tell us a little bit about Spooky World, the movie, Spooky 101, what you guys are doing, and what you have for us tonight, my friend, because I know you mentioned that you have some special reveals for us, and I know you want to do one of them fairly shortly. So I will give the floor to you, my friend.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Of course.
So we here at Spooky World, the movie, this journey started out a few years ago. David Bernalino, the owner of the original Spooky World in Berlin, Mass, then Foxborough, he had an idea about possibly documenting his journey through not only creating America's first horror theme park, but how it influenced other parks in the country. And it couldn't have been put together unless we had a brilliant mind like our director, Quinn Monahan, to put this together. And what you're going to see tonight is going to be just a taste of what you have to look forward to. I had a chance to view this earlier this week, along with a couple of other acts in the film, and my jaw hit the floor. It's everything we could have hoped for and more. 3 years of blood, sweat, and very good tears of joy now are coming together. We have our podcast, Spooky 101, as well, which has been a vehicle to bring us to this moment. So now that we're here, I think it's time for the movie to speak for itself. But there's also a couple of other names that we need to talk about. We need to talk about our friend Bill Tattaglia, who you're going to see what he put into this film later on tonight in one of our reveals. But our reveal right now is from our good friend Joel Robinson, who many of you know from his artwork. He has done some of the most incredible pieces of work for some of your favorite films that have been reissued through Shout Factory, distributors like that. He has an unmistakable artistic style. And when we brought this to the table, I said, guys, we need to have Joel make the teaser and the poster for our film. So, why waste any more time, folks? You've been waiting long enough. We've been teasing you for a while. So if you can bear with me while I just try to hover my mouse over here, we would like to show you the premiere of the teaser poster for Spooky World, the movie.
Oh boy.
I'm so excited for this.
Hold on 1 sec.
No problem. Let me know if you need anything on my end.
Let's see here.
Please pause as the minds behind this podcast work for technical difficulties.
In 3, 2, 1. Do you see it?
There it is.
A little VP on the front.
This is the long-awaited teaser poster for Spooky World, the movie. And it is beyond anything I could have anticipated. I just spoke to David today. He's overjoyed at what was put together with this. I'll zoom in a little bit for you here for the nostalgia purposes. I mean, you can't mistake that barn.
Look at that beauty. Oh, man, that's awesome.
They even have it down to the glow necklaces that the kids in the hayride had.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So awesome.
That's just incredible.
It
just
is
incredible.
And folks are going to be wondering how Vincent Price is incorporated into the storytelling narrative. And when this came to the table earlier this year from Quinn, once I saw it in action, I couldn't think of any other way to have the Spooky World story told. Vincent Price is absolutely perfect for what we need story driven in this. So like I said, I've seen a few acts, and Vincent Price in the Price estate. Thank you to Victoria Price for allowing us the privilege of having her late father be a part of telling the journey and the success and the triumph of Spooky World.
I mean, let's be real. The price is definitely right. Like, if you want someone to tell a story, it's got to be Vincent Price. Vincent Price slams every story he has ever told. Like, Pit and the Pendulum. Every old school movie with Vincent Price is so good. So, I love it. I think it's awesome.
I have a feeling we might talk a little bit about Vincent Price tonight.
I think we should, because
I think Tony might bring him up. So, Tony, I know that there's some stuff that's like yet to be revealed, but for those who may not know, what can you say about the connection of Vincent Price to Spooky World?
So, during the storytelling phases of Spooky World, one of the things I didn't realize until recently upon speaking to David is there was a photo that David had in his office of Vincent Price, and I didn't realize it was an autograph photo. And it was just before David embarked on creating Spooky World, from the Berlin Fun Farm all the way up to the ongoing legacy of Spooky World. he met Vincent Price, and he told Vincent Price of his endeavor, and he absolutely was the wind beneath his wings on this. So the Vincent Price impact is felt across the board everywhere, and especially in spooky world. And I think that motivation that it gave David helped push it to what it is today.
Sorry, my mic was muted. That's awesome. That's great to hear. Thanks,
How
Otis.
much is he? Like, he's like, yeah.
Otis,
Yeah.
my man.
Otis, my man. So yeah, don't mistake the dog barking for a lack of professionalism. It's just the fact that we record from our home studio here, and Otis, our dog, always likes to chime in because he is as passionate about horror as we are. Follow him at the Spooky Hound Dog on Instagram. He always likes to interact with his fans on Instagram, I must say. So, wow, we are off to a great start here, and I know it's only going to get better. So I feel like before we kind of jump into the rest of the reveals that you have for us, Tony, I mean, why don't we just jump right into the topic that we have here tonight? So I know we teased this with our announcement that we were going to go live on Facebook and YouTube, but we wanted to talk about gateway horror movies tonight. This is a topic that we kind of started brainstorming probably about a month or so ago when we all met up down in America's hometown, had a nice time, and bopped around, had a couple drinks, had a nice little Sunday fun day. And I just think it's important to note, and kind of, obviously we're all crazed horror fans, horror fanatics, right? Not everybody is like that. So I think it's important that there are some people out there that aren't as well versed in horror movie lore as we are. And with Halloween coming up, I mean, we are less than a week away from October, which is fucking insane to say out loud. I can't believe that. Pardon my language. I can't, where did the summer go? Where did September go? Now we're about to be in October. So we came up with the idea of each picking a subgenre of horror, or genre, as Alex Trebek would say, rest in peace, and listing some of our essential films for someone that may be new to the horror scene. And so Tony is going to talk about classic horror films. Kat is in her specialty going to talk about slasher movies. Andrew's going to talk about some deep cuts for you. So if you are a horror fan, you're listening to this, there may be some films that Andrew lists that you may not have seen before. And then in typical Mike fashion, I'm going to talk about creature features, monster movies, because that's what I'm all about. So
Mike is a creature, so not surprised.
What's that?
I said you're
Say
a
that
creature,
again.
so we're not surprised.
Oh, yeah, not at all. Not at all. So, I think it's also, before we get going here, it's important to note, and, I know, at least for me, Tony, I'm sure, Andrew, Kat, you guys feel the same. Many of these films that I'm going to talk about tonight hold a nostalgic feel for me. I was brought up to be a horror fan from a young age by my dad, who probably showed me a lot of these movies way younger than I ever should have seen them. And that has influenced my fandom and my demented mindset to this day. So shout out, Dad, if you're watching. I think he actually is. So yeah, there's definitely nostalgia here. I don't know if any of you guys want to talk about that at all, but that's just something that I thought about when we were thinking about these movies tonight. Tony?
Yeah, honestly, I think that the seeds for this were planted when I was able to sit down with you folks finally to meet you in person in August. And, my better half isn't really, never really was a horror fan. And I mean, look at the world that she's now dropped into. Like how do you teach that? So, you don't force things upon people. You're like, hey, if you want to delve into it, I think that the little cheat sheet we're making for folks, those seeds were planted just from our personal lives, our friends. And I think that the good thing about this episode is it's something you can just like, hey, if you don't know anything about it and you're curious, here, click on this episode. And I think that I'm by no means any expert, and I will never claim to be. But what I see in this is I like the Spooky World movie, a walk down memory lane. And it also opens some doors up to nostalgic moments of your childhood. Like I remember growing up, the subgenre that I'm doing today. I remember getting the Universal Monster toys before I ended up seeing the movies. You know, like it was that much pop culture. You get the vinyl costumes, things like that. So we're going to be opening those doors for you today. And, you know, I hope that this is something that people can revisit and hand down generation to generation from some of the films we're recommending.
Well said. I couldn't have said it better myself, and I completely agree. Before we get into all of our movies tonight, I should actually, you know, as we are live on Facebook and YouTube, I would encourage you, if you are watching, this is an interactive show, please do write in with questions, and we will do our best to answer them all for you. We do have a question that popped in. Tony, I feel like this is probably a good one for you. You might be able to see it down on the bottom of the screen here, but it comes in from Rick Cook. I have a question for all of you. Who built the Reaper mascot on the side of the Horror Museum? And I'm assuming he means at the original Berlin Park for Spooky World. Tony, do you know who did that?
It's more of a matter of who didn't do it. That's what we're running into with a lot of the Spooky World movies is there were so many hands in that. We have at least 4 or 5 people that we knew did build outs there. So I'm pretty sure that everybody grabbed a bucket of plaster and helped create that, because I do know for a fact that that was one of those, if you go on YouTube and do deep dives about Spooky World in Berlin, and I know that a lot of folks have been visiting there lately, even though it's not there, the spirit's there, but the park itself isn't. And one of the last vestiges of the park was that Reaper on the side of the museum. And sadly, I believe last year, it was so well installed in the side of the building that somebody they were trying to sell it off, I believe I was told, and the person was literally ready to pick it up when he pulled up there, and it was in pieces because the plaster was so built onto the building. So honestly, who did it? You're just gonna have to wait and tune into the movie.
That is what they call a professional tease right there, my friend. That is what they call a professional tease. I love it. I love it. So good question, Rick. And I think without further ado, we should probably jump into our topic here. And Anthony, with you being our guest, why don't you kick us off with your first classic horror movie that you feel is essential for someone trying to get into horror? Away you go, my friend.
Well, I'm afraid that I may scare people off with this one because still to this day, Nosferatu is incredibly chilling with such little they were able to put into the film. So Nosferatu, the very first vampire film ever made. You cannot forget the incredible role of Count Orlok, played by Max Schreck. That is one of the most haunting, iconic figures in all of movie history. We also have to remember that this movie and Dr. Caligari gave birth to the mainstream tapping into and borrowing heavily to this day of German expressionism, which I think that most horror movies still and most films still incorporate it to this day in a lot of their storytelling because it's so effective. You know, I think what's more scary to people is what lies underneath as opposed to what's on the surface. And German expressionism with the distortion and things like that really make things chilling. And some of the special effects in that were just absolutely incredible for the time. But I think that if we dig back further into how films like that were made, a lot of people don't know that in Germany after World War I that they had to pay reparations. So before the country went into bankruptcy or lost all their money, a lot of folks were taking their savings and spending money. So the German government, which was hemorrhaging money, decided to put money into filmmaking. One of them was with Max Schreck and Count Orlok in Nosferatu. And I mean, the amazing thing about that is, you know, how many copycat films were made? I mean, you can look at it because it's going to play right into my next film, which we'll talk about in a moment. But it still to this day resonates, and not a word is uttered in that film. It's a silent film. To know that what you saw on the celluloid could resonate that far over 100 years later is incredible.
I think the fact that it's a silent film, it brings it to a different level. I feel like nowadays that concept is so wild and crazy to most film audiences to be able to envision a film that doesn't have any audio. So I think that brings it to a different level. And for my money, I think Nosferatu is the scariest portrayal of a vampire ever put to film, in my opinion. Andrew, what about you?
Not necessarily on the same level. Like, that movie is terrifying and it's well done. I'm curious, Anthony, I can't remember the name of this movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It was it had Malkovich, John Malkovich, Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe, yes.
Shadow of the Vampire.
It was like the creation of Nosferatu. Have you seen that?
That's what I was going to, that was my last bullet point on it.
I thought that movie was really well done.
I got to bump into John Malkovich accidentally a couple of years ago at SOA in Boston. He was shopping, and I immediately, one of the, I mean, we can talk about being John Malkovich, all of his laundry list of stories, but Shadow of the Vampire is one of my favorite reflections of making that film. And it actually made that film more terrifying to me because William Dafoe in that was outstanding.
Oh, amazing. That movie is absolutely terrifying for like a recreation of what the movie's supposed to be. I thought that movie was awesome. Highly underrated.
Willem Dafoe looks like a vampire in real life.
He's a goblin. He's a green goblin. And
yeah.
This is why I never excelled at yoga.
Tony, have you heard, by the way, that that they are doing a potential remake of Nosferatu with Robert Eggers, who did The Lighthouse and also The Witch? Supposedly that is his upcoming film. He's got one film that's coming out, I think, next year, but after that, it's supposed to be a remake of Nosferatu. And I feel like it's in good hands with him, I think.
I hope so, because some of my favorite films are remakes, and I don't know, like there's some that I think about and I'm like, absolutely not. I put my foot in the ground. One of them you're going to talk about later. I put my foot in the ground. That should never be remade. But Lighthouse, that I may actually watch that one.
Have you seen The Lighthouse yet?
Yes, from your recommendation.
Man. What a wild film that is.
A little bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Go back and listen to our episode in The Lighthouse if you haven't listened yet.
Yeah, please do, folks.
It's a wild movie.
By the way, this podcast has guided me through I don't know how many commutes to and fro work, getting out of the shower. I absolutely love what you folks do. On a side note, so thank you for what you put together.
Well, thank you so much, Tony.
So kind of you to say. Thank you very much.
One more bullet point about this.
Sure.
So F.W. Murnau, I'm looking at my notes here because I mean I'm doing 5,000 things nowadays and I live off of my notes. The Head of Janus was a film that F.W. Murnau, the director of Nosferatu, made shortly after, and basically it's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. In that film was Bela Lugosi before he played Dracula. So literally there's like, you can connect the dots. Like most of our films, it's the 6 degrees of separation. We'll be able to play that game all day today. So yeah, please, Nosferatu, put it on your lists. It has to be one of the first ones you see.
All right. Nosferatu, our first film in the realm of classic horror. Thank you very much, Tony.
I love it.
Golf clap indeed. And congrats to the United States on winning the Ryder Cup today. I have to say, because I'm an old man and I watch golf. So with that being said, Gato, it is your turn. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about slasher films in general and give us your first essential slasher film?
Yeah.
Away you go.
So just a quick, synopsis of slasher films. It's a subgenre of horror films. It's usually a serial killer who uses bladed tools. Duh. A lot of the peak of the slasher films was between like 1978 and 1984, given like maybe till the 90s ish, and included Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Black Christmas, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play. My bad. Candyman, Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's kind of like the basis of the slasher genre, if you will. I would say my favorite classic slasher movie within the slasher genre is Scream, because it's like the basic, obvious choice to do for any
I knew it.
movie. I know. I was like, we've already talked about this on our podcast and stuff, but it really is. I mean, it follows all of the things. Like, even like when I was a kid, it was like something that I just grew up with. And like, you know, the main character / like most famous person who was on this title was Drew Barrymore, and she got killed within the first like 15 minutes of the movie. It was crazy. And so it just started off being so gory and so gruesome, and it just became the classic slasher film. So that's the first one I'm going to talk about. But also, they really focused on, usually slasher films focus on the actual murderer versus the villain versus the protagonist. But Scream really focuses on Sidney Prescott, who's the protagonist, like through the entire movie. So it's kind of interesting how they do that versus like looking at the actual villain for it. It's a different take on it. But I love this movie. It's just so classic. Like, even Randy, like, I mean, you guys know how Randy like says, like, you don't know the rules, like, so you can't drink and you can't have sex and you can't have this. And he is like told, it's like such a classic scene where you're just like, these are the rules of like any horror movie. It's awesome. Like, it's just, it makes me so happy to see this whole like scary movie, you know, breakdown of the, I don't know. It's just a nostalgic thing that I've had since I was like in high school. So
Of course. And for one, I knew that absolutely this was going to be your first choice, because I know how near and dear this movie is to your heart. And yeah, Scream is a classic. I mean, obviously directed by the late great Wes Craven. And it kind of got a reputation for being one of the first horror movies to kind of be aware of other horror movies and know like you said, Kat, the rules of other horror movies, which I think was a unique thing in the late 90s, when there was a lot of, and, you know, say what you will about 90s horror. Some people love it. Some people hate it. There weren't exactly a lot of, you know, I guess, influential movies coming out at that time. And Scream is obviously one of those movies that is the opposite of that, breaks the mold. And I think it, you know, kind of carved out a reputation, carved out a franchise, an iconic villain. And obviously, you know, we did a Final Girl draft on our show a few weeks back. Yeah. Sidney Prescott is a great character. And I think that that's one of the things that Craven does well in that movie is he draws out, he creates good characters, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I loved how, like, even that whole scene where, like, Randy breaks down and he's like, you can't have sex. And everyone's like, big no, big no. And, like, it's just this great, like, awesome, like, scene where he just says these whole things and everyone's just kind of like, okay, don't drink. And everyone's like, cheers. Like, it's awesome. Like, it just really defines the whole.
I'll be right back.
Like,
I love that. You took the words right out of Matthew Lillard. I'll be right back.
It's so awesome. Like, it's just great. And you see, like, Rose McGowan and, like, the garage door, and you're like, oh my God. But at the same time, you're like, you said you'd be right back. Like, I don't know. Like,
exactly.
So yeah, I love Scream as a classic slasher movie. It's perfect.
Yep. Tony, Andrew, any thoughts on Scream before we move along?
Actually, I would dare to say that Scream kind of saved slashers. I think Wes Craven came out of pseudo-retirement. He did New Nightmare, I think, 2 years before that. And I think New Nightmare was absolutely amazing. But
fantastic movie.
Slashers in and of themselves were on life support. We're coming off of the Halloween franchise getting tossed around from studio to studio. They were in the middle of the drought there after part 6. Friday the 13th. What we had, Jason's Final Nightmare, or the Final Friday. That's what it was called. I mean, for mainstream slasher films, I think that Scream brought it back because it was so self-aware. And I think that Wes Craven made a little love letter to slasher films. And at the same time, keeping a little tongue in cheek, but he made a compelling whodunit. It was like a slasher met Clue. That's how it came off to me. So, yeah, amen to that. I would put Scream up there too.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Awesome. All right, Andy, my boy. So we're going to roll into deep cuts with Andrew. Deep cuts with Andrew. That could be its own podcast. I feel like deep cuts with Andrew. That could be its own thing.
Yourself, dive deep in Andrew.
So why don't you tell our audience here what qualifies as a deep cut, and then go into your first movie. I will give you the floor, my friend.
I will get into deep cuts real quick just by talking about Cat's slasher movies. I'm not a fan of slasher films. I find them to be boring. There's nothing to them. They're just basic, and they don't give me that thrill. Having said that, I think there'd be a good idea for a Jason movie would be like a Western version of a Jason movie where it's like Unforgiven mixed with like Friday the 13th. Might be kind of cool. But aside from that, a deep cut from Andy.
That's already been done. It's a movie called Bone Tomahawk, if you've never seen that.
I haven't seen that, but that sounds
very good. Watch it. Kurt Russell's in it. He's a stud. He'll come up later. Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
Anything with Kurt Russell, especially if he's in The Thing, obviously, good movie. But a deep cut for Andy is a movie that it's like the antithesis of Scream, essentially. That's all. I mean, that's all it is. There's no difference.
And that's totally fine. I think, honestly, what makes our show very good, if I do say so myself, is the fact that we do have a diverse, interest in horror movies, as is exemplified by tonight. So, yeah,
that's the main thing. Is like Kat loves all these awesome movies, and I'm like, I don't like those movies. They bore me, and I like just weird movies. Like, to me, a good horror movie is a movie that is just make me feel uncomfortable. I want to feel super uncomfortable the entire time I'm watching this movie. And if you do that, then you've hit a level, because that's a whole different level that can't be like, there's few movies that can do that. So for me, an Andy pick or whatever is the Andrew's picks or the deep cuts are just movies that make me feel super uncomfortable.
Okay. Got it. So what's your first one?
So I'm going to start, I guess I'll start in the way back. So 1978, it's a movie called Magic. It stars Anthony Hopkins, and he plays a stand-up comedian that finds no success, but he's also a very talented ventriloquist. So he ends up getting into a good deal of success based off the fact that he is a good ventriloquist. And the scary part of this movie is that eventually his puppet, or whatever you want to call it, takes over his thoughts and he basically does what the puppet wants him to do. It's like he's pulling the strings. So very, very unsettling movie. Anthony Hopkins is awesome. It's 1978, so it's got very minimal, there's no special effects to this movie. It's just it's grainy, it's grindy, it's perfect to me. So,
and you have Sir Anthony Hopkins, which I feel like is a big get.
I feel like nobody talks about this movie. Anthony Hopkins is a great actor, and nobody talks about Magic. And this movie is fucked, and people need to watch this movie.
I mean, I can't lie. I've never seen this movie, so I have to go back and check it out. Do you know if it's streaming anywhere in case people do want to watch it?
I mean, I think it was on Amazon. I doubt Kat's seen this movie. Anthony, maybe you've seen this movie?
I haven't seen it. No. That's
yeah.
Okay.
I saw Crazy in the 90s on VHS, and it was absolutely amazing because I'm in my teens at that point, and I'm saying this is one giant metaphor for working for an employer. You know what I mean? So It was incredible. I loved it, and I never looked at Howdy Doody or Pumpets the same way.
Yeah, like we got those. You got the Twilight Zone version with the puppets, terrifying, and like this is like the beginning to that feeling that just there's nothing scarier than being just manipulated by another human being, especially if you're being manipulated by the puppet. Like to me, that's terrifying.
And Anne Margaret was outstanding in it too.
So I was actually just going to say I just got a message from my dad, who is a big fan of this movie, and he also mentioned Anne Margaret. So, Dad, thanks for listening. And
love that.
Go based on the Mike Walsh Senior recommendation and watch Magic with Anthony Hopkins and Anne Margaret. Good call, Andrew. Good call.
It makes me feel really good that someone else has seen this movie.
That's the gold
I haven't seen it
right
yet.
there.
I haven't seen it yet. All right, so I guess that means we're on to me, and we're going to talk some monster movies. So strap in for that. And the first movie that I'm going to talk about is one that is, near and dear to my heart. I think this movie is probably one of, if not the greatest Carpenter movie. I mean, it's up for debate, right? Because I mean, Carpenter has had a gigantic legacy of films, including Halloween. But I'm going to talk about The Thing here tonight. And The Thing, obviously, Anthony, we talked about this before. The Thing is a remake of a movie called The Thing from Another World. It came out in the 50s, I think. It was a Howard Hawks film. But I have a Mount Rushmore of horror movies that I consider to be perfect films. I have 5 of them. I know that Mount Rushmore has 4 movies. Don't at me, all right? 2 of the 5 movies that are on this Mount Rushmore of mine we're going to talk about tonight. 3 of them, actually. The other 2 that I can mention without spoiling everything else are Halloween and The Shining. But The Thing, I think it's just a perfect combination of characters, practical monster effects, music, cinematography, gore, tension, Andrew's background sounds, the whole 9. All the practical effects were done by Rob Bottin, and I think that kind of gave him a legacy of being one of the best practical effects artists in the business. It's definitely not a movie that you want to watch after eating, and I think with that being said, you probably don't want to watch this movie, before eating, after eating, anything like that. And as we talked about before, it has Kurt Russell, who's a stud, absolute stud, playing R.J. McCready. The cast is awesome. I think, honestly, there's a cast of characters in this movie, a bunch of actors that were in roles that you've seen before, a lot of, like, those guys. You see them, you're like, oh, my God, I know that guy from this. I know this guy from this. And they're all great. Keith David, Kurt Russell, a bunch of other people that I probably can't remember all the names right now because it's a live stream and I'm nervous. And I think it's probably up there with one of the best horror remakes of all time, alongside the likes of like Cronenberg's The Fly, Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead that came out a few years ago, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, George Romero's The Crazies, It, the new one that came out, Kat, I know how much you love the miniseries. I don't want to hear about it. And then also Let Me In, which is a remake of Let the Right One In. I think this movie is probably at the peak of all the horror remakes, in my personal opinion. And I think what essentially makes a very good monster movie is not only the monster itself, but if you can create a scenario where the movie would be good if the monster is not in it, and then you add the monster in, that is the success. That is the recipe for success, I should say. And I think what Carpenter does here, and there's a lot of ways that this has been analyzed. People have said it's a metaphor in the 80s for the AIDS epidemic, a metaphor for Cold War paranoia. But the sense of paranoia that Carpenter builds in this movie really sets this apart from other monster movies, in my opinion. And, Carpenter does a great job of slowly pitting all of these men against each other over time. And there are just so many iconic scenes. I can't even name them all, but I mean, just to name a few, right? Of course, the blood test scene. That is probably the best scene in the entire movie. Tony, I see you reacting there. What do you, that scene, right? Oh my God.
So, I mean, I'm not going
As I
to
put
say
my
that
phone on vibrate here.
Carpenter is if you couldn't tell by what's going on in the background here, Carpenter is my one of my favorite all-time directors, in my top 3 easily. And the
Absolutely.
thing,
I'm with you, Tony. Yeah.
fact. And by the way, people think he's crabby, and he's far from it. I had a chance to meet him a few years ago. Delightful, wonderfully engaging gentleman, and his music is top notch. But what brings me to this too is his music, because we all know Carpenter makes all of the music for his films. The Thing is an exception. He actually got a legend from, if you've ever listened to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, any spaghetti western, Ennio Morricone.
Yeah. Ennio Morricone, as they say. Huh? Is that how you
Mhm.
pronounce it? I don't want to mispronounce that. Sorry, as I dropped off for a
Mhm.
second here. I don't know what technical difficulties. Pardon me.
And I mean, I think that the genius to Carpenter is, if it makes any sense, his complexity with simplicity, if that makes any sense, because that the Halloween theme and the Thing theme are just this heartbeat, basically, and it's just
Yeah.
this underlying dreading pulse
Boom,
that
boom.
permeates throughout the film, and you're waiting. It's like a dread, and The Thing is just it's in my top 5 horror movies of all time, easily. That film
Yeah.
was brilliant. And I mean, you want to talk about a time capsule film? That test isn't too different than what's going on right now. Right?
Dare to say Carpenter predicted the future, huh?
He kind of did. Not wrong.
Unbelievable.
But I think
Unbelievable.
we're all having the same reactions, being tied to the chairs. Get
Yeah.
me out of this fucking
Gentlemen, I know we've all been through a lot. But if I could ask you a favor, I'd like to not spend the rest of my life tied to this fucking couch.
It still cracks
Another
me
another
up.
good point from Mike Walsh Sr. I forgot Wilford Brimley in The Thing, obviously. Diabetes.
Mhm.
Wilford Brimley.
It is. And
Goes bananas.
We lost him this year. Another
Yeah.
legend gone too soon.
Yeah.
Pour
By
one
the
up.
way, absolutely. Hold
Yeah,
on, I got
cheers,
I got
cheers.
my coffee.
Yeah, cheers to Wilford Brimley, yeah.
By the way, folks, I'm looking at the comments, and I see that the creator of Spooky World is in here commenting.
Excellent. I
Big fan of
love
Andrew
it.
Smick.
Awesome. I dropped off, so I might not see some of the comments. I did see one before I dropped off. And before we get into our next round of movies, I apologize to whoever asked the question because I can't see it anymore. But I know somebody asked if there was going to be reprints of Spooky World T-shirts. Tony, can you comment on that at all? I know there's some surprises you want left out, but
We're a fan of. I mean, we have one of the most genius people of marketing on the face of the planet who founded Spooky World. So I'm sure that David is not averse to making a T-shirt or 2 or 3 or 400 or hats and koozies and things like that. So, Rick, you have to stay tuned to our page, into our social media, into something else we're going to reveal later. And I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to spend all of your money on our site. So keep your eyes open.
excellent. All right. So, Tony, with that being said, why don't you give us your next classic horror film that you want to talk about?
Okay. I wanted to do. You have to have Universal monsters. I mean, it's not just horror; it's pop culture. They were everywhere through. I think that even if you go back and if you're lucky enough to have a great grandparent around right now, then you're going to be able to see some version of a Universal monster, whether it be Dracula, the Mummy, or my pick. I originally wanted to do Bride of Frankenstein, but I need to get you there, so I picked Frankenstein. James Whalley, absolutely brilliant. And again, picking that German expressionism to weave into it. It's like, who's the monster in the film? I think that's the ultimate thing. and this also leads us to women in horror. Mary Shelley. This deviates from her book, but her book, without this woman's book, we wouldn't have this. I think that Frankenstein was, and I love Dracula, but Frankenstein was the horror movie at Universal. I think it carried more weight than Dracula did, and that's no disrespect to Bela Lugosi, but look at what Karloff did out of this. The very next year, he did The Mummy, and then after that, Wally wanted to continue the story for Bride of Frankenstein, which was more true to Mary Shelley's story than Son of Frankenstein. It pretty much launched the sequel market. I think that Universal was the sequel market long before we had a part 2, part 3 at the end of every film. They had a different name for each iteration of it. But my God, It's Alive. How many different things is It's Alive mentioned in? Kirk Hammett, when we had a chance to see his traveling horror collection exhibit up at the PBD Essex Museum in Salem a few years ago, that was his tagline. It's Alive. That was the name of the exhibit. Yeah, I think that Universal Monsters and Frankenstein have to. And the best part is any age can watch it. Any age. And my favorite character in the long run from that film has got to be Baron von Frankenstein, just for the comedic value in that. He was absolutely brilliant.
I love it. And I mean, as a fan of Universal classic monsters, I'm so happy that you brought this up, because I watched all these movies as a kid. I grew up watching a bunch of black and white films at my grandparents' house. My grandfather is not a horror fan at all, but he would put on like Abbott and Costello, Meet Frankenstein, like those types of movies. So I definitely feel you on the the viewing experience there. But I mean, Frankenstein is so iconic in so many ways. It's been redone a million times, but there's no more iconic version of Frankenstein, aside from maybe Mary Shelley's original story, than the one with Boris Karloff. I mean, it's just there's no comparison. And it went on to spawn a bunch of sequels, create a bunch of characters. You have the Bride of Frankenstein, and it's just so iconic. And it's something that Universal justifiably still leans into these days. And, at their theme parks and the movies, there's actually I've heard that James Wan is doing a new take on Frankenstein for Blumhouse and Universal. So the legacy of Frankenstein lives on, for sure. Kat, Andrew, any thoughts on Frankenstein?
I love Frankenstein. Just in general, just as Frankenstein is a monster, like I love the references to Frankenstein in pop culture. Like Seinfeld, they've referenced Frankenstein when Kramer's babysitting and he does the weird.
Of course, you're like,
that's the best. That's so good.
So I'll preface this. I'm not a classic movie monster freak, because I got involved with horror a lot later in life. So those classic, iconic, you get Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy,
Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Phantom of the Opera.
But I don't have any sort of like ties to those, which is why my picks are kind of always off the rails. But I do appreciate them for who they are, and I appreciate their appearances in pop culture throughout it, and like that. That's all I was trying to say. Like,
and I think it's important to note too, and Tony, I think you touched on this, but like these movies saved Universal from bankruptcy back in the 1930s because they were cheap. They were cheap to make, and they were very profitable. So that's essentially what turned Universal into a profitable movie company. And now here we are, almost 100 years later, and these characters have such a lasting legacy. So Frankenstein is an essential. If you have not seen Frankenstein, oh my God, it's great. The last scene alone, where Frankenstein is trying to make friends with that little girl, and he's trying to be good, and it doesn't exactly work out well.
See you later.
Heartbreaking scene. Heartbreaking.
Well,
so
let's talk about that right now quickly.
Yeah.
There's a new Halloween movie coming out, right?
Yes.
All right. And what
Sure is.
how did that movie in 2018 end?
In a fire.
Yeah.
In a fire, the monsters at bay. And guess what happens in this new one, which Blumhouse has done nobody any favors when it came to just hiding the whole plot of this movie. First thing we saw months ago was Michael Myers coming out of the fire, right? So at the Bride of Frankenstein, very beginning, what happens? The monster comes out of the fire. So very much that template was made. And couple of quick points. You brought up about how Universal nearly went up to bankruptcy. James Whalley was initially signed on to do war films, and he just didn't want to do it. And when he read Mary Shelley's thing, he's like, maybe I can adapt this to the Lemleys, because they were very tight. So it was kind of by accident that James Whalley brought this to life. And if you've seen God and Monsters, I couldn't recommend that any more highly about his life. Please, just like the last one, Shadow of the Vampire. Now we've got God and Monsters. These movies were so impactful that they literally made a dramatized version of these films 70 years later.
You're speaking to me essentially on this, because I prefer like the documentary style, like version of how that movie was made. So for me, like Frankenstein's awesome, Dracula's awesome. You got these classic movie monsters, but I prefer like those weird, like just where the story came from movies. So for me, those are the movies I want to hear about. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Mm-hmm. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
And folks, I just want to give some late breaking news here. I hate to be the bearer of bad news to Rick Cook, but as of right now, there are no plans for T-shirts. So,
oh no, that's too bad.
You can make our own.
Hey, tell David he might want to rethink that. But hey, I guess we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Yo no say.
Yeah. All right, Kat, give us your next essential slasher movie, please.
So we ended up with Scream, and the we'll say the final girl was Sidney Prescott, where we can roll into the not so Sidney Prescott was the not so typical final girl, but they focused on her so much because they didn't focus on the villain as much as they focused on the protagonist. But the more typical final girl would be Laurie Strode, which would be from Halloween. As like, so Halloween is my next slasher movie that I would like to kind of touch upon very briefly. I mean, we've already done Halloween and everything. Everyone's seen it. It's fine.
I'll give you 90 minutes.
Say it again.
I'll give you 90 minutes. Go.
All right. So obviously Laurie Strode is a typical final girl. She's a virgin. She's the good girl, etc. Carpenter actually denied that he was writing sexually active teens to be victims in favors of like this whole final girl survivor thing. But in the same sense, like so many other people copied it. So, I mean, it was definitely a theme at that point in time of the whole rules thing. I mean, that was kind of the way that it was going with slasher films. Obviously, the other huge piece is Michael Myers, who is one of the most iconic villains, like slasher villains of all time, who, you know, has the crazy face that the iconic face that everyone remembers. He has that whole like swagger kind of just strut about him, like as he goes about his victims. He never runs. Like it has every component of a slasher movie you could ever need. Like it's the basic one that you go to. I mean, I don't really even know how much to elaborate on it besides like, I feel like, why wouldn't you mention that? Right. I mean,
go ahead.
I was going to say, beyond that, there's one trivia question that I had. So the one question I have for all of you is, how many movies in the Halloween series is Michael Myers in? 3. He's in 3. No, Andrew, that's incorrect.
I don't fucking know because
It's like 8 or 9. 8 or 9 now.
That's very
Tony
incorrect.
knows.
3 is just wrong, but okay.
Tony knows. Let's defer to our guest here.
Tony, let's go.
Would that be all of them?
No.
Except no.
Well, no.
Season of the Witch. Actually, no. He has appeared in Season of the Witch.
Yeah, he's in Season of the Witch. In the movie.
I didn't think he was in Season of the Witch.
Dr. Chalice was sitting at the bar having a drink. Yep. The advertisement for Halloween the movie came on with Michael Myers running down the stairs. And he said, turn this crap off.
And I couldn't agree more with Dr. Chalice. My man.
It's got to be at least 8, Catherine, if you're counting the current sequels.
I was going to
8
say
or 9.
The only one he was not in was Season of the Witch. But if he's in Season of the Witch,
he is in Season of the Witch for a second.
Well, no, I'll honestly.
I'll allow that.
Technically, if you want to be technical, he's not in it. He's on the movie. So,
Kat, look. Halloween isn't for everybody, but for those who it is for, they love it. They embrace it. You spend ridiculous amounts of money on useless crap that when you write your will out, you go, who the hell is going to take this from me?
Right.
So, and how are they going to look at me? I'm like, I'm like lucky to have a girlfriend with half the crap on my house. So I'm like, how does this work? But at the same time, you were absolutely right. The best part about this film is nearly zero blood. It was all timing, lighting, suspense. Dean Cundy was the MVP of that film. The lighting in that is perfect to the point where they go out of their way now to replicate it. From what I'm hearing in the new Halloween movie, they're literally saying, go to Dean Cundy's playbook. Dean Cundy did the thing. He did Big Trouble in Little China. It's absolutely mind-blowing just how much they did on such a small budget. What was it, $300,000 in 78?
It was, it was $300,000 in 78. That's exactly right.
300,000. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And 20,000 of that was for Donald Pleasance.
Yeah.
We don't know if the story's true, but you know why he signed on, right?
I don't know if I know the story.
He told John Carpenter that I wasn't originally going to do this, but my daughter listened to your soundtrack from Assault on Precinct 13 and loved it. So I'm doing this out of a favor to her. But who knows if it's true, him just breaking stones. But and Christopher Lee says it's his biggest regret not playing Dr. Loomis. They offered it to him first.
Wow.
There's
that's crazy.
Is awesome. Probably my favorite actors of all time.
He's great. And I think, Kat, to your original point, this movie is definitely an essential movie. I mean, my mom, who doesn't even like horror movies at all, hates them, to be honest.
Yeah, we watch this. Yeah.
Loves this movie. Watches it every year with my dad.
Yeah.
And I think Michael Myers, or I should say The Shape, is probably, I think, the best horror villain of all time.
He's an
arguably the most iconic.
From head to toe.
Boo you, Andrew. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Look, I think every podcast has an Andrew with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do. And that's fine. That's fine. It's not for everybody. I've heard people love or hate this film. And it has really no middle ground on it, if you think about it.
Yeah. It's very simple.
But what the effect on pop culture there's no Friday the 13th without Halloween, and there's no Halloween without Black Christmas. That's the truth of the matter, because Irwin Yablon saw Black Christmas and then wrote The Babysitter Murders, and that's when Carpenter was hired and they changed it to Halloween. And again, let's go back to the female influence in this. Deborah Hill had such gravity on the interactions in this film because most of the dialogue in this film is done by women. Except for Donald Pleasance, all the dialogue is done by women, and Deborah Hill is because of that. They named the town after the town she grew up in New Jersey. She was John's girlfriend at the time, but she is one of the greatest producers in Hollywood history, in my opinion.
No.
I couldn't agree more. Andrew and I actually talked about her because last week we did Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, and her and Carpenter produced that, and we talked about her. So, no.
Now we're talking about Halloween. We're talking about Season of the Witch.
I know. This is a perfect segue onto you, Andrew. So why don't you go ahead and give us your next Andrew deep cut movie, my friend? The floor is yours.
With Andrew.
So I've thought a lot about this, and to me, you can't do one of these top three without speaking of Stephen King. And there's a lot of Stephen King movies that get a lot of notoriety, but to me, a movie that never gets talked about is The Dark Half, directed by George Romero, starring Timothy Hutton, and that movie's amazing. Like, it's so deep, it's so dark, it's so twisted, and I love that movie. And it's one of the movies not that I've ever read. Let's not get this wrong. I've never read any Stephen King books, but this one is truest to his books from what I've heard. So The Dark Half for me is a movie that if you haven't seen it, you should watch it, because it's like one of those like perfectly made for TV movies, but a little bit better. That's all I got.
I'll never forget the brain surgery.
Oh, that's like one of the best scenes in the movie. Like, also, like, what is it with the sparrows, or they have like that comment, like when the birds come or something like that, when the sparrow, like, that's so good. I love that movie. It's so dark, so twisted.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely were talking about this movie when we were watching *Malignant* recently, because
it's kind of similar. Like, it plays off the same thing with like the coma and the conjoined twins. Like, I feel like this movie was a huge inspiration for *Malignant*, and if James Wan doesn't want to give it credit, then that's on him, but kind of stole from it. So that's all I'm going to say.
Also, I mean, so George Romero and Stephen King were very, very good friends, as evidenced by making The Dark Half, making Creepshow. So I feel like The Dark Half, like Creepshow is the one that's a little bit more famous. Dark Half definitely flies under the radar. So I would say if you've not seen that movie, it's definitely one you should check out.
Mike, right?
I'm sorry?
Have you read The Dark Half? Because you read a lot.
I have not actually read The Dark Half. I've read most Stephen King things. I have not read The Dark Half, though. Tony, have you? We can't hear you, Tony.
I'm back now.
There we go.
I cannot. I am, one of my big regrets is because I have so many friends who are massive Stephen King fans, and should be, and the whole world should be. I have yet to read a Stephen King book.
Wow. Oh my God!
I know.
And
as you dodge and avoid all the tomatoes being thrown at you and everything, yeah.
Hey, look, I want to. I just have to get rid of like one or two of my 47 jobs.
I know. You're a busy guy, so I don't begrudge you there. Okay.
No, it honestly, creating is it's such a different world now, and but at the same time, everyone should read the books before they see the movie, or even if you just saw the movie, go read the book. Seriously, Mary Shelley's, like we were talking about her, go read them.
Yeah. My recommendation for you, Tony, start with Salem's Lot or The Shining. Those are my two favorite Stephen King books. And his short stories are fantastic.
I read The Green Mile, but it's kind of a chore. But it's
really
good.
Green Mile's long. A lot of King stuff is long. Really, like the Stand, when you look at that, you pick it up, you're like, Jesus Christ.
Oh, it's unbelievably it's huge.
Oh yeah.
I actually think that was the slam the brakes moment for me. I was in the bookstore, and I remember I had to read War and Peace in high school, and I went, I can't do this again.
No, you're intimidating. Forget it. Never mind.
I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have been as acclaimed if it went under War, What Is It Good For?
War, What Is It Good For? Another Seinfeld reference from Andrew. It wouldn't be a show without one of those. All right, so let's keep rolling here. I'll give you guys my next monster movie pick, and this is going to be one that's no surprise to anybody here. Anyone that knows me, anyone that has listened to this podcast, knows about my love of Jaws. Tony, and I know you're a huge fan as well. Jaws has had such an impact on my life. It's hard to understate how much of an impact it's had. It's arguably my favorite movie of all time. Probably this or Goodfellas. If I had to coin flip, it's probably Jaws, because I've seen them both a million times, but I can quote them both at will. I don't know. I still don't know to this day. Jaws was arguably the first summer blockbuster movie, and it launched Steven Spielberg into the stratosphere. And I think now, Jaws came out in 78. We're in the year of our Lord 2021. While there may be movies that scare me more now, I don't know if there's ever been a movie that has terrified me more viscerally to my core, scared the absolute ever-living shit out of me, aside from one other movie that I'll talk about in a few minutes, than Jaws. It is famously made people afraid of the ocean and afraid of sharks, to the point where Peter Benchley, who wrote Jaws, was apologetic for the fact that he wrote the novel, because he created such a scare about sharks that he actually felt bad because people were hunting them, scared of them. So it made people terrified of sharks. And the plot of the movie is entirely plausible. This is not a supernatural movie where, there's ghosts and all this shit. Jaws is entirely plausible. And anyone who has seen Jaws and has been out in the ocean above their head that has not thought about the threat of a shark, I say to you, sir or madam, or they, you are full of shit. Because it's not as if a shark has never eaten anybody before. So, this could happen. And it has not only some of the most iconic scenes in a horror movie of all time, some of the most iconic movie scenes of all time. I mean, you're going to need a bigger boat. That line, by the way, was ad-libbed. Roy Scheider's reaction to the shark was real, as he was not told that shark was going to be popping out of the water. Quint's USS Indianapolis monologue scene, iconic. And then, obviously, the opening scene with Chrissy Watkins getting killed, unbelievable. And, again, my testament here is that it's not one of the greatest horror movies ever made. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. If you're a fan of film in general, not just horror film, Jaws, if you haven't seen it, what the fuck are you doing? Go watch Jaws. Drop what you're doing. Stop listening to our podcast now. It's the only time I'll ever say this, and go watch Jaws. And it also, one of the greatest movie scores ever created, and kind of launched John Williams' career from there. So I could wax poetically and nostalgically, if I could only speak, about Jaws all day. I feel like I've talked long enough. You guys have at it. Tony, I know you're a huge fan. Kat, Andrew, go for it.
I was going to say the worst part about Jaws for me was I didn't actually watch Jaws until I started dating Mike, because I never wanted to watch Jaws because I liked going out in the ocean in Green Harbor over my head, and just wanted to enjoy being naive to everything in the water. And then all of a sudden Mike's like, you should watch Jaws. And I watched it and I was like, wow, thank you. Now, in my 30s, I never want to go over my head in the ocean ever again. And you've ruined my entire experience.
I'm sorry about that, but
no.
It's a great movie. So,
it's a great movie, but it is also very very realistic. But I appreciated it as an older adult, watching that movie, as long as I put it off. But yeah.
So I also have a confession to make here. I am a 34, soon to be 35-year-old man that's lived in Massachusetts my entire life, and I've never in my life been to Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket, ever. Tony, I know that you have been to the Vineyard, and you have seen where this movie was filmed. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
I want to build you up here, young man, because you're a young pup. And I did not get to Martha's Vineyard until 2019. So do not feel bad about that. But the great part was we have this wonderful thing called the internet and Google Maps. And for better or worse, social media, which we're on today. And we're using this tool for the better right now. there's a few Jaws community pages on Facebook, and I was able to meet a few people on that. And there's some, like, one of the things I love to do, thanks to people like Sean Clark. I think anybody who has watched bonus material on any of the Shell Factory movies, or goes to a convention, his Convention All-Stars company, or watches his podcast, The Thing with Two Heads with Chris Nelson, the Academy Award-winning special effects artist. I watched Sean long before that because he was one of the first people to do movie locations. Like, you can find them. They're free. There's no admission. It's kind of a treasure hunt. And to know we have this kind of a treasure hunt in our backyard really drew me to going to the vineyard. I probably would have never gone to Martha's Vineyard if Jaws was never made. I would have been here or there. It's a beautiful place. I love going there, but to actually, most of this stuff hasn't changed. I mean, sure, some erosion here and there, but State Beach, where Alex Kittner was eaten. And folks, Alex Kittner, Jeffrey Voorhees is his real name, is one of the owners of the Wharf Pub in Edgartown, Massachusetts.
No relation to Jason Voorhees, by the way?
No, well, it all comes... we get influenced everywhere, right? So if you go to Martha's Vineyard, go to the Wharf Pub, which is a stone's throw away from the ferry where the mayor approached Chief Brody at the beginning, and their political influence told him to not report it as a shark attack. You can do all of these things and go on all of those rides for free. Well, the ferry's a couple bucks, but you get my gist. And also go to the Wharf Pub, say hi to Jeffrey Voorhees. He has special t-shirts made up. Like, I'm still alive. He has an incredible Facebook page. But Jaws, what it has done to the fabric of America, we could dedicate 2 hours to that, but we don't have the time. But I will show you one of my most prized possessions from Jaws. My good friend Dana, who I met on those Facebook pages, gave me this a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a piece of the orca?
That is a piece of the orca, the sinkable one. There were two of them.
Wow.
That's so
this
awesome.
is actually a piece of the stunt orca, the one that was designed to sink at the end.
So cool.
In Katma Bay. And the first one, I do think we all know the story tragically about what happened to the first orca at Universal Studios. Steven Spielberg used to go down to it. It was on the tour. Remember the Jaws ride at Universal? You could actually go on it.
I remember it well.
He used to go down to it and sit in it when he wanted to reflect, or he was having like writer's cramp, something like that. And he used to sit in the hull and think about it. And then one day he went down and it was gone. And he's like, where is this? And it was cut into pieces and thrown away in the back lot.
That's such, yeah. I've heard that story before.
It's just,
also heard that Spielberg was furious about that.
One would think, one would hope.
Rightfully so, yeah.
But I don't want to monopolize all the time on this subject because we all have nothing but adoration, because this is outside of horror. This is one of the greatest films ever made.
But I mean,
Carl Gottlieb helped save that movie. Carl Gottlieb wrote the USS Indianapolis scene. He wrote all the jokes in it. Brilliant mind. He's still with us. He always is. He's an affable man to speak with. If you ever get a chance to chat with him, please do it.
Okay. Kat and I have a very nostalgic experience for the Jaws ride at Universal Studios in Orlando, specifically because the first vacation that we ever took together was to Universal Studios in Florida when we first started dating over 10 years ago. And it closed shortly after we went. And it was one of my lifelong dreams to ride that ride. We did just a couple months before it closed, and that ride was
and we both have pictures.
Fantastic.
We have pictures like inside. I definitely have a picture inside the shark of like me. Like half of my body is like inside of that.
Oh yeah, I have one too. Yep, I have one too.
Yeah.
All right.
Universal was pretty awesome too. As was that King Kong ride at Universal and Earthquake.
Yeah.
Oh, Kongfrontation. Oh yeah, we could do a whole podcast on Kongfrontation and Jaws the ride for sure. Yeah, Great
One more
rides.
thing before we go. There's a comment in here from Dennis Burke that says Jaws made me afraid to swim in swimming pools.
I couldn't agree
Alligator.
more.
Alligator did that to me.
Yep, that's also a scary movie. Yep.
There was a scene where a kid got pushed in the pool by his friends on Halloween, and they didn't realize the alligator was in there and it ate him. So I
Yeah.
doubled down on my fear. The shark, all of a sudden, sharks and crocodiles or alligators were in pools. And
Don't forget python snakes. Those, yep. No thanks.
Yep. Yep.
Terrifying.
All right, Tony, we're gonna go on to you now here for another classic horror movie. But before I do, I have to say thank you to everyone who has been commenting and asking questions. Dennis, thank you. Maria, thank you. Thomas, thank you for watching and commenting. We do appreciate the support and you guys tuning in. Yeah. So I feel like, Tony, your next pick here is probably going to tie a little bit into the poster that we saw earlier. Why don't you talk to us about your next movie, my friend?
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny how things work out because there's an era in film in the atomic era. We could go into sci-fi films all day, but in the 1950s, films were taking it to the next level. You heard of smell-o-vision, things like that. The gimmicks around films in the 50s could have their own documentary, and I think that William Castle is at the front of the line with that. William Castle made The Tingler with Vincent Price, but he also made House on Haunted Hill. And House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price is literally the template for haunted house films and whodunits. I brought up Clue earlier. I don't think Clue would be as effective a film as it is without films like House on Haunted Hill influencing it. So one of the gimmicks that William Castle did, I think, have you folks heard about what he did with The Tingler? That like every 4 seats, there would be a buzzer under a seat. And at one part in that film, they break the 4th wall. And for those who don't know what that means, it means that they take the film, they pretend to be in the world that they're in, and they come out to you. And somebody says, I think the Tingler just went out into the audience. And people would start getting freaked out, and there'd be buzzers under certain seats, and it would freak them out. House on Haunted Hill also did that. I don't know how many people are familiar with it, but there's a scene in it where a skeleton comes out of the acid bath in the basement. At that exact time, William Castle said, okay, every theater in the country would have a black box set up next to the screen with a skeleton inside of it on a string and would swing it out into the crowd. So literally coming right out to you. And people would freak. They would also hire in a few cities a female actress to get up and scream. She was a plant in the audience. She would jump up, scream, pass out. And then when the skeleton in the film, Vincent Price was actually operating a piece of machinery on ropes to operate that skeleton, they would wheel it back into that box. So they made the audience and broke the 4th wall, much like Spooky World did. Spooky World would have its actors come out at you, haunt you, scare you. But for the kids who were afraid, like in our poster, they would have the glow necklaces on. So they were in the safe space. But what that film did for haunted house movies, to this day, you can trace it back to House on Haunted Hill.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one where if you haven't seen it, you kind of need to. I feel like that's one of, if not the essential Vincent Price films.
I have a quick question for Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't require a response. It just requires a yes or no. So you love Vincent Price movies, correct? The Abominable Dr. Phibes. Have you seen that movie? Because
who hasn't?
Look at that.
Poodles sure are tasty.
Oh, that movie, probably my favorite Vincent Price movie, and that's because it's weird.
It's messed up. That movie is so messed up on so many levels, and it was brilliant. And I think that's one of the things about Vincent Price was he didn't pigeonhole himself in, like, I have a soft spot for Lugosi. We brought it up earlier, but Lugosi was like, I'm Dracula all the time, 24/7 now. Price, just adapted. I mean, even to what was that film in the late 70s? I love it. The Monster Club. Have you seen that?
Monster Club. Yeah, I would say yeah.
Monster Club, not it was like a disco murder whodunit, and Vincent was like in his mid to late 70s with a laundry list of other classic actors, and it was just based around a disco thing. But Price was he had tongue in cheek, and I think that every Vincent Price movie, especially in a warped way with The Abominable Dr. Phoebes, he had his tongue firmly planted in his cheek, and it made it even more scary.
Oh yeah, he was awesome in that movie. I love that movie. It's so good, and the second one's good too, even though that's terrible, but still good.
Probably a good time to bring up, if you haven't at this point subscribed to Spooky 101, which is Tony's podcast leading up to the release of Spooky World, the movie. I would highly recommend that you do that. In fact, I don't recommend. I order you, if you're a listener of America's Hometown Horror, go and subscribe to that podcast right now, because the last episode that they actually released, they interviewed the daughter of Vincent Price, Victoria Price, and having listened to it, it is an awesome interview and a very candid peek into the life of that man, and not only his life, but his daughter's life as well.
And the influence that they had on David Bertolino in Spooky World. And
Of course.
It's amazing how it helped give birth to it. And now, as we're telling the story, his presence just drops itself in again and helps us be a focal point to tell it. Because one of the things we're having an issue with, I mean, obviously the 90s, I've told you before, not everybody has one of these. Nobody had one in the 90s. So you were a slave to finding VHS footage. So a lot of it, Matthew Hopkins, Witchfinder, Dustin Barkus just chopped in. Love that film. Absolutely.
Yeah, buddy.
But yeah,
attaboy, Dustin.
But what we're doing now, and thanks to Vincent Price and his estate, is when you finally see some of the things and some of the words that we're incorporating from Vincent Price into our film and how perfectly they fit in, you're going to be like, this makes sense now. This makes absolute sense. Why didn't I think of it? And once I have goosebumps. I can't wait to show you something in a few minutes, folks.
Oh my God. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. All right. I know we have a few more movies to talk about before we get into that. So why don't we keep going? Catherine, how are you? Ready to talk about another slasher?
Sorry, I forgot I was on mute. I know.
That's okay. All right.
Yeah.
Catherine, what's your last essential slasher movie, my friend?
So my last movie is going to be a curveball. It's going to be a little wild card. It's a present day slasher movie, which kind of goes against a lot of the regular horror slasher movies. And it is a movie that we watched when we first subscribed to Shudder, which is called Haunt. So that was a movie I don't think we've talked about on our podcast yet, but it was out in 2019, and it was directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. It was set on Halloween night. It's kind of the whole vibe of like a bunch of teenagers drive by this like construction sign that says haunted house this way, and they kind of just follow it. They kind of take the bait and whatever, and they get into this haunted house and they find out that it's not really just a haunted house. It's very realistic. I won't go too much into detail because I feel like I want people to watch it, because I know a lot of people are waiting to see like new horror movies, and to see now that it's a spooky season, you want to have things to watch. So I kind of want this to be more of a have you guys, I mean, besides Mike, Andrew, did you or like Tony, have you guys seen Haunt on Shudder?
We watched this with Andrew Cat, so Andrew has seen it as well.
Andrew,
yeah.
But Tony, have you seen Haunt?
Thanks to you, I just did.
Oh,
I watched it the other day.
Yeah.
And I said, let me give this a shot. I might as well make use of my subscription to Shudder, which I always do for Joe Bob, at least. By the way, Shudder's doing an amazing job at everything they do.
Shudder rocks.
They're amazing. And by the way, this film, I have seen some crap haunted house films, and we all have.
Right? Yeah.
This film was actually very, very good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Haunt. I really did, because a lot of films are guilty about over embellishing on the redneck juggalo aspect of things, like kind of playing into what Mike was saying, the things that you don't see are the scariest. And they held back on revealing the faces of these guys for nearly the whole film.
Exactly.
And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And the traps that they had, brilliant. And the use of and at points taking light out of it and utilizing limited resources like her flashlight. The claustrophobia that brought into it was perfect.
Oh yeah, I feel like the whole movie was just like very well done, and it was very well done for now, because I feel like a lot of things that are done now are kind of cheesy, and this was kind of like, it brought you back a little bit, where you're just like, okay, well, this is kind of an old school kind of feel to it with kind of some new school twists. So I enjoyed it a lot. I would watch it again. I haven't watched it I think we watched it when it first came out, but
we did, and we watched it again with Andrew after the fact, so we've seen it at least twice, I would say.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Looks like we have a listener who agrees with us. Scott Toomey says Haunt is amazing. So, yeah, nice choice, Catherine. It's a great
movie. So definitely, I mean, check it out this season if you're looking for a spooky movie. To all of our listeners, definitely check it out. It's a good slasher.
I co-sign.
Yeah.
Yep.
I concur. I concur as well. But I think the good thing about this movie. Go ahead, Andrew. You go first. I'll let you go first. I just think, like, you know, when you this time of year you're talking about and you're thinking about going to haunted attractions, and this kind of takes that like urge and sense and makes it a scary thing, right? Like, what if you go to a haunted house and it's real? They're actually trying to kill you. What if you go to a haunted house and there's a hound dog upstairs that barks and screams when you try and podcast? That's also a possibility. Thanks, Otis. But yeah, Haunt's a great movie, produced by Eli Roth, which I have varying mixed opinions on Eli Roth. I'm not the biggest fan. I know certain people are, but this is a good movie. I agree, 100%. Andrew, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just agreeing with what you guys said. That's literally all I had. That's it.
Yeah, you better agree. You better agree, bro.
Right, agree. Don't agree to disagree.
By the way, the guy in the comments, Scott Toomey, who also said it's amazing. You folks are going to be seeing him coming up in the Spooky World film. He is one of our children who grew up in Berlin, because Scott gave me the Iggy on how to appropriately pronounce the name of, it's not Berlin like Germany, it's Berlin. And, I'd like to thank Scott for educating me on that. But Scott grew up with Spooky World as his backyard, and we're going to hear his story and how cool that is to literally have that as your playground in your backyard.
Scott, I look forward to hearing your story, my friend. All righty, Andrew, why don't you give us your last deep cut, my friend?
It's so hard. I had to like boil it down to like 2. So I'm going to give you 2 because I can't give 1. I'm going to do it real quick. Okay. So, I know. So 1990s Nightbreed. It's a Clive Barker movie. It's really fucking weird. It's like this guy that gets killed and he ends up in the cemetery and he starts partaking with these creatures that live in the cemetery, and they're battling back against like a psychiatrist, I think, who is played by David Cronenberg. He's like the serial killer in this movie, and he does a great job. The Mask is awesome. It's a really weird movie, and it's highly underrated. I feel like this movie gets a lot of shit for a lot of reasons that I don't understand. So I would watch that. Okay, so real quick. So now 2014 Starry Eyes. I think you should see that movie. It's to me, it's like a borderline like giallo, like Italian horror film. To me, like I feel like it plays along those lines. It's about this girl who is trying to make her way up in Hollywood and get these roles, and she does a lot of stuff that has been attributed to like Harvey Weinstein character. So it's a really weird, uncomfortable, unsettling type of movie.
The Me Too movement.
Yeah, but it's really well done. So I would recommend both those movies. I don't want to give anything away because to me, like if I'm going to talk about a movie, I just want you to watch it. So I'll give you like a basic on it. So just watch it. They're both very good.
Okay.
That goes
Excellent.
to the top of my list for this fall.
Which one?
Starry Eyes.
Yeah, you got to watch that movie.
Yeah,
That movie's
Starry Eyes is great. It's very good. And also, Tony, have you seen Doctor Sleep? I'm sure you have.
I did. I was actually very happy with how that turned out. And so I had the crib notes on this. So she actually is in Doctor Sleep. So I'm like, okay.
Correct.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would say the actress that is the main character in Starry Eyes plays Wendy Torrance in Doctor Sleep, and she looks just like her.
Crazy.
Yeah.
When I saw it, I said,
Yeah.
I was blown away. That was done so. Another tip my cap to Netflix. I mean, well done on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tony, before we go on here, it was also brought to my attention that a very good friend of Catherine designed the hat that you're wearing tonight.
Oh, really?
She works for 47 brand. Her name
That
is
would be-
Jen. Yep. And the hat you're wearing tonight, she designed.
I have that in the PSL one. So thank you.
I think she did both. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hey, look at that.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing how these things just
Come full
all
circle
happen.
all the time. Yeah.
Yep.
I love it. It's one of my favorite hats for the season.
Jen's awesome. She's a big supporter of our show and a great friend. And she also made the koozies that we have for our show, which Jen, we
I
need some
have
more
one
of those,
too.
by the way.
Yes,
yeah, we
you
need
do.
some more of those. You do have one of those. Scott, again, Starry Eyes and the Neon Demon would make a great double feature. Having not seen the Neon Demon, I know you've recommended it to me a number of times. I'm sure it would. Thoughts,
yeah,
Andrew?
but it's kind of up there with like. See, you don't really like Velvet Buzzsaw or
Velvet
So-
Buzzsaw sucked. That movie sucked. I'm sorry.
Nocturnal Animals. That's really good too. You should watch that. Similar
Okay.
style.
All right. Fair enough.
That's good. Not just because Jake Gyllenhaal's in it, but it's very subtle. I like those types of movies that are just like.
I love
subtle.
me some Gyllenhaal. And my favorite Gyllenhaal movie is a movie we covered in our show called Prisoners. Fantastic movie. Fantastic. All right, so why don't I bring it home here with my final creature feature movie, our final monster movie. And again, these three movies that I'm talking about, they're all kind of interchangeable to me, but I saved this one for last because I think, for my money, which is an expression that I've used a couple times tonight, Ridley Scott's Alien is the scariest movie ever made. And the alien, the xenomorph, to me, is the scariest, if not one of the most iconic movie monsters of all time. This movie is essentially a slasher movie set in space, but I feel like that is an oversimplification. This movie is about a lot of things, but that, if you boil it down, that is essentially what this movie is. Now, with that being said, most people that watch slashers, obviously slashers are Kat's favorite type of horror movies, right? People that watch slashers yell at the TV, like, get out of the house. Like, why are you doing that? Turn the lights on, you fucking moron. Like, what are you doing? Get out of the house. Why are they still here? This movie solves that problem. They don't get out of the house. They don't go anywhere because they can't. They're in space. And in space, no one can hear you scream. And it's just such a gritty movie. I feel like in the 70s, space was presented in a couple of different, very contrastable ways. So if you think about like Kubrick's A Space Odyssey, 2001 A Space Odyssey, right? That's a very white-collar space movie, okay? It's very beautifully shot, beautifully done. Alien is presented in a very blue-collar, gritty way. Like, everyone that's on that ship, they are blue-collar workers. This is a company where, like, they are the grunts of this company, right? And the whole thing is just so gory and so uncomfortable. And I just love everything about Alien. And I know I mentioned with Jaws being viscerally terrified. And I think Alien, aside from Jaws, probably the most viscerally I've ever been scared in my entire life. Again, thank you, Dad, for showing this to me when I was essentially way too young. My God, this movie fucked me up so hard. Oh, my God. When the chest burster scene among a bunch of other iconic scenes, I mean, holy shit. I remember where I was the first time I saw the chest burster scene. I thought everything was good. I thought that thing, the face hugger that was attached to John Hurt's face, I thought nothing was going to come from that. I mean, it died and it fell off. And then all of a sudden they're having dinner, they're chilling, they're relaxing, they're hanging out, they're laughing. And then everything gets so much worse. It just gets so much worse. And I don't think I slept for about a week after that. It is a movie about being violated. And it's so scary. It's so weird. It's like nothing had ever been done like Alien when that movie came out. I stand by that. And I think it gives you the best final girl in the history of horror movies in Ellen Ripley. And
Fact. Absolute
fight
fact.
me because she's the best. So Alien, I could talk about, and remarkably, given my love for Alien, this is one movie that we actually have not dedicated an entire episode on our show about. So that's coming. We're going to do a guess with that. Go ahead. Absolutely. Take the floor.
Please. I would love to join that one. I don't know where to start, but I'll just say Geiger, Ridley Scott, Sigourney Weaver, Holm, and also not telling your cast when a practical effect is about to go off.
Yep. Oh my God. Yeah, they all look terrified.
Yeah, Geiger's art and influence on that film just is mind-blowing. And if anybody wants to do a deep dive into this, there's numerous stories around the internet about the difficulty that Dan O'Bannon had with bringing this story to the silver screen. A lot of politics getting involved in that. That's another story you might like, Andrew, if that's your cup of tea.
Yeah,
it was tough getting this thing brought into production, but I check mark, cosign, you name it. Alien for me, and I'm a diehard Halloween fan, but Alien may be a perfect horror film.
Oh, 100% it is. There's no doubt about it. There's few. That's like the only reason that one is a top horror film for me is because it involves science fiction with it. And to me, if you can do that, then it's perfect. That's why it's better than Halloween. Michael Myers, go fuck yourself. There's a fucking xenophobe. Not
as a monster movie guy, I don't know if there is a movie antagonist that I prefer more than the Alien. In Alien. I don't know if there's one. I mean, and I feel like this movie is so minimalist, and obviously, like, in the future, they kind of took the sequels in different directions, right? James Cameron's Aliens is also a fantastic movie. Alien is the superior movie.
Yes.
I don't care what anybody says.
Episode.
That's the superior movie to me. But I feel like, when you get into, you call it the xenomorph. Okay. I think it's better called the Alien. The movie is called Alien. It's about something that is alien, something that is alien in a particular atmosphere. It's about the workers on the spaceship in space. Everything is so like vague. It's perfect. It is a perfect movie in every way, shape, or form. And we will talk about Alien, I would say, someday very soon. I would say probably next April when it's Alien Day. So, Tony, you're obviously welcome to come back at that point.
Schedule is clear unless something I'm about to announce takes up my time.
Well, I you are such a pro, my friend, because that is a perfect segue. So for those of you that have hung on for this episode so far, I think Tony has something very special that we want to reveal before we log off. Now, Tony, I'll ask you, do you want to have this be the last thing people see, or do you want to comment on it after we watch it? Or do you want to just talk now and then leave it with people to end the show with?
All right. So there's 2 more bullets in the chamber tonight. So this is the second.
Okay.
So
okay.
Thank you for your. First of all, this was outstanding. I had such fun doing this, and to look at who's commenting in here, you've got David Bertolino, you got Scott Toomey, you've got Quinn, the director, who just co-signed on Alien, and we've got my better half, Maria. Thanks, nice to see you. Love you. You're downstairs.
What's up, Maria?
So
Maria's
yes, Scott Toomey, your question I'm answering right now. We have 2. Actually, I'm going to give you a 4th. How about that? Before we play this clip, actually, you know what? You've been waiting long enough. You've been waiting 3 years. Roll that beautiful bean footage. Let's see it.
All right, let's do it. Hold on.
This is your first clip from Spooky World, the movie.
Here we go.
And that's it.
David decided there was a need for a hayride and explored a few places, one in New Jersey.
So I flew out and I was on the back of the hay wagon, watched this terrible show that they put on.
These actors sat on lawn chairs, smoking or barely even getting out of their seat.
It was so terrible, it was funny.
So David came home, all fired up and excited.
I'm game for this. I want to go back. I want to talk to this guy again.
He created the concept of actors in full costumes and makeup who could interact with the hayride and embellish the experience, but in a safe way. It would be a perfect fit for us because we were in the Halloween business.
I started looking for locations.
We had the costumes, we had the makeup, and we had the expertise and knowledge.
So I drove to every highway exit coming from Boston to the western suburbs and really spent some serious time searching for the right location. I managed to find a place that was a former dairy farm on about 6 acres of land in Berlin, Massachusetts, 25 miles west of downtown Boston. It had a beautiful looking barn, a bit dilapidated, but I could see the beauty in restoring it, along with fields surrounding it if we needed parking, and a huge brick house built in late 1700s, a really spectacular home on the route of Paul Revere.
This beautiful property in Berlin that just seemed to be the dream place.
We called it the pig.
I love every second of that. It's so good.
Did that end when it was supposed to, Tony?
It did. It did.
Okay.
Okay. We were able to shoehorn Mac McDermott in there. If you're watching Mac, we hope you like it.
So I thought I was going on a little bit longer. I was literally of the 4-word text I was about to send you behind the scenes, Tony. I wrote, "This is fucking," and I was about to write "incredible," and then it ended because, oh my god, that's so cool.
It was awesome. I know it definitely leaves you wanting more. You're just like, I just want to keep going. Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
These are all the things that Quinn and David. This is the moment we wanted you folks to see, and because we can have a Spooky 101 podcast all we want with incredible interviews with wonderful people who we have more stories to tell, but everybody wants to see the movie. Everybody's like, when are we going to see a clip? Well, there's a clip.
Yeah, and it's awesome.
And there's more. And there's more that's imminent.
There is. Yeah.
We, the past 3 years, David, Quinn, and I had talked about it. In this film, in a perfect world, in a non-2020 world, which is carried over into 2021, could have been out last year, could have been out this fall. But, there's a lot of silver linings out there to what's been going on with the world. And some of those time delays have allowed some people that we really wanted to show up on this film to actually lend their voice to the story. And the Vincent Price estate coming on board. a lot of these things just came in. And when these things started falling, these dominoes started falling, you know, it wasn't just, hey, we like your film. Do you want to have it on our service? It wasn't just one knock. It's multiple knocks, which has caused us to go, oh, I think we have something here. So it's October. We want to show you something. But I've been told by David today that, you know, as we come out of those long winter months, you know, Halloween isn't just October. I know for all of us, Halloween's all year long. So how about we give you a date now? How about
Oh,
March?
baby. Oh,
How-
baby.
And it's not Halloween. There's plenty of things to distract you on Halloween. How about we give you March of 2022 to watch the entirety of the Spooky World film. And we're going to hold off on saying where it's going to be as our next reveal in the near future.
I'm all about it. I like the teaser. Tease
You
me,
like-
baby. Tease me.
You liked the minute 40?
I love
Oh,
it.
Well-
I loved every second of that.
Well, then I think that you folks earned yourself a little bit more.
Oh, I was hoping you would say that.
So how would you like a little over 6 minutes?
Oh,
oh man. All right.
yeah.
So, folks, it's not just a film that goes into this, it's a team. David Bernalino believed in me, believed in his best friend, Quinn, who has worked tirelessly through sickness and good health to make this thing come to fruition. Bill Tattaglia, burning the midnight oil, putting this, what I'm about to show you together, and helping behind the scenes, filming some of the remote scenes in Massachusetts. Jen Wolfson, many people have helped put this together. And folks, I'm about to share the screen here because we have a home for Spooky World, the movie, that you can go to outside of our social media. And it's coming on your screen right about now.
There it
Folks,
is.
www.spookyworldthemovie.com. And if
Oh,
you
baby.
and there's that iconic, and I'm going to say it now because this is an iconic teaser one sheet we are using now for our website from executive producer Tom Savini, Spooky World the movie. And if you scroll down and click right here, I'll just tap that.
Is that working on your end, Tony?
It is on
Okay.
yours.
I got it now.
You do?
I was gonna say I have no sound.
Okay, let's try that again. How about now? No?
Nothing yet. No.
All right, you know
Sorry
what?
for the technical difficulty, guys. Bear with us here.
Sorry,
We're trying to do
folks.
this live.
You know what? Here's even better part. Go on your own to the website tonight. Click on coming spring of 2022, and you are going to be rewarded with 6+ minutes of a preview of this film.
I couldn't agree more. And obviously, you know, I know we've been going for a while here. Tony was gracious enough to share this with us ahead of this podcast. That sizzle reel, my God.
Oh.
The second I watched it, I texted him,
It's
and
so
I immediately,
cool.
I was just like,
So
my God.
awesome.
Like, Robbie, immediately I wanted to watch that.
I got goosebumps, and it is just apparent the muscle
time,
and the effort and the energy behind this whole project, which just I couldn't be happier that to be your podcast partner. And thank you so much
Thank
for
you
coming
so much.
on our show
We
and
love you guys.
debuting all this stuff on
Love
our
you guys
show.
too.
It's unbelievable. We appreciate you so very much. You know, I never, ever, ever thought that when my Uncle Walter took me to Spooky World out in Berlin back in the early 90s, you know, right there, that I would ever be sitting here almost, 20 plus years later talking about this in documentary form. So, Tony, happy to give you a platform, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. I can't thank you enough.
And that's
I am
Sizzle Reel
so
is
grateful.
amazing. Like it's
Yeah.
awesome.
I can't say
Monahan
like
is
the second go to spookyworldthemovie.com right now and watch it.
It gets you sizzle reeling. Really.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I want to thank Quinn Monahan, Gail Jordan, David Bertolino, Bill Tataglia, Jen Wolfson, anybody who helped us behind the scenes, who inspired me, anybody whose hands touched this in any way. You will be in the credits and have our infinite gratitude, appreciation. And we cannot wait for you to see this feature-length film. And it's coming soon, and we're going to announce where it's going to be even sooner.
I absolutely love it. Well, with that being said, I mean, we've done our reveals. You guys, we've seen the poster. We've seen the website. We've seen a trailer. You know, a sizzle reel's out there. I've seen it. Kat and Andrew and I have seen it. It's time for you to go see it. So drop off right now after we say goodbye and go watch the sizzle reel, for Spooky World the movie. But before we say goodbye, I first and foremost want to thank my co-hosts, as always, for being great. But also I want to say thank you to Tony for coming on and giving us his time, because he's one of the busiest guys I've ever met in my fucking life. I mean, honestly, you always have something going on because you're incredibly talented and always got your hands in a million things. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on our show. But Tony, for those who may not know, if they want to follow you or Spooky World the movie, where can they do so? On social media, wherever? Where can everybody find you guys?
Okay, so we have on Twitter, Spooky World the One, at Spooky World the One. Then on Facebook, we have Spooky World the movie. On Instagram, Spooky World movie. On YouTube, Spooky World the movie. And most importantly, as of right now, this absolutely incredible website, spookyworldthemovie.com. And it's I can't believe it's here. I am so grateful. I am so honored to, in some small way, help bring this film out. David, I'm so happy right now. Quinn, thank you to everybody on America's Hometown Horror. On behalf of everyone at Spooky World the movie, we appreciate you. We love you. And you're seeing it right there from David Bertolino himself. Thank you, folks.
Yeah. Love it. So excited about this.
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Awesome
Thank
stuff.
you, David.
And I appreciate you folks accidentally turning this into a long form episode.
Oh, of course. I mean, I kind of had an
Kind
idea.
of
Yeah,
hard.
we got about 15 minutes, and it's going to be a little bit over an hour. So thanks for giving us 2 hours, Tony. Even though we were originally budgeted for 1.
Well, now Maria and I are going to go get dinner, so she's going to be pumped.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I don't want to keep Maria and your lovely dog waiting, so I'll let you guys go. But I will say, first and foremost, I mean, I continue to be thankful to anyone who listens to our show. Thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of America's Hometown Horror. My name is Mike, as you can see by the little tag on the bottom left. I'm the host of the show. I have been joined by my co-hosts, Andrew and Kat, as always. And as Tony said, if you're interested in following more of what we have to say on social media, you can also find us on our website, which is at ahpod.com, ahhpod.com. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. Just go on there and search for America's Hometown Horror, and you shall find us. And we're on Twitter at Hometown Horror. We're on Instagram at Hometown Horror Pod. And if you feel so inclined, you can shoot us an email at hometownhorrorpodcast@gmail.com. You can also listen to our show wherever you're listening to our show right now, but on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, blah, 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 wherever else you listen to your podcasts. Thank you again, Tony, for joining our show. I really can't even say how much I appreciate you joining us.
Love you all. Thank you so much. And
you too,
David
brother.
And Quinn are both thanking you both right now as well. Happy Halloween, everyone.
I know.
Happy Halloween.
Season.
Hey,
Yay.
Tony, let's meet up for a pint at the Plymouth BBC very soon.
Yes, absolutely.
You got it.
8
First
more
round's
days
on
of
me.
Halloween.
Maria, you too. Maria, you too.
Yes.
All right, folks. Say goodbye to your listeners, everybody.
Goodbye, listeners.
Adios, amigos.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Yay.